All right, so we're gonna do top 10 metal hard rock albums of the 2000s. Now we did the 90s last week. The 90s was harder for me. This one was a little bit easier. Here's something funny though. I had two records on this that once I looked up the dates, because I went through and looked up the dates this time, I had to kick off.
Were they 90s?
Because they're records that I picked up in the early 2000s that came out in the late 90s.
Oh, dang.
So those honorable mentions are Vision of Disorder's Imprint record, which is just like a very abrasive hardcore record, and then Candiria, Process of Self-Development, which if you never heard that, like that's one that I think you would dig too.
Candiria.
So anyway, those are the honorable mentions from the last session that didn't make the list. We might have to go back and do like honorable mentions 90s and then honorable mentions 2000s too, or like underrated albums or something.
Yeah. Well, and given the difference in our age too, this one was probably harder for me than you.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
We may have some similar ones on this one too, though, I think.
Yeah.
At least some of the same bands, maybe not the same albums, but
yeah, I agree.
So my number 10, after everything else got pushed down, I started adding stuff and pushed it down. My number 10 is Norma Jean, Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child, which came out in August 13th, 2002. And I mean, some of their albums after that are great too, but I think that one really made me go like, oh wow, that's like heavy and like in a way that I haven't really heard before. And then they busted it up.
Did you listen to them before that album came out?
When they were Ludacris? I have Ludacris CD.
Okay.
And yeah, it's not as good. It's definitely not as good, but their second album after this one is very Botch influenced. Have you ever listened to Botch?
No.
That's another band that I didn't realize, like I got into them in the early 2000s, but their big records came out in the late 90s. But they're so influential to bands like Norma Jean and Under Oath, just their guitar style. They do this kind of like off kilter, like it's hard to explain. But anyway, that's my number 10, Norma Jean, Bless the Martyr, Kiss the Child. So
nice. My number 10, I'm not sure if you've heard of them or not. 40 Below Summer, Invitation to the Dance.
I have heard of them.
New Jersey bands. They kind of blew up for a little bit and then they never really got huge. And I don't think that this is their first album, but this is the first one that kind of got attention. And
they're kind of new metal, right?
Yeah. Yep. I
remember that record. I remember liking a couple tracks on that.
Yeah. It's a really good album.
There's a few bands from that era, and I honestly think some of this Drowning Pool stuff is reminiscent of that era. But 36 Crazy Fists is another band that from that era that I think is underrated. Like they have a couple really great albums. Anyway,
yeah,
we got about 30 minutes to plow through this stuff.
Oh man,
my number 9 is going to be Dillinger Escape Plan, Miss Machine. And I chose that record specifically because I think it's the first full-length record that Greg was in the band on. And before that, they did a record with Patton. It's the EP, Irony is a Dead Scene. But this record, it's like the Mr. Bungle of like thrash, basically. Like it's like a lot of different timing changes. Really odd subject matter. There's a song on this called Unretrofied. Have you ever listened to it?
No.
There's a song called Unretrofied on there that is like could be like on the radio. Like it could be like a top 40 song, literally. Like it's got the best hook.
Huh.
It's so crazy because it's surrounded by like a hurricane of like just insane, like off tempo. Like those guys used to like flip off their amps and stuff. Like they were so insane live. I saw them in this tiny room at the Knitting Factory and they like destroyed it. Like just, yeah. Anyway, their Dillinger was in their prime, were top tier.
I'm taking notes. I'll check it out.
Unretrofied. Check that song out. That's a great song.
Where do you know where Dillinger's from?
They're from Jersey, actually.
Jersey.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My number 9. Smile Empty Soul, first album.
They are from Santa Clarita.
Is that far? That's not far from you.
Yeah, it's like right over here.
Okay. I don't know. That's not a band that I stayed following a lot over the years, but that first album, there was something about that just struck me. Like he just kind of bore his soul on that, and
Good band.
there was something about the simple songwriting that really grabbed me.
They broke up, like didn't they release that one? I think they released that record and then broke up.
I mean, I follow the guy on Instagram and stuff.
They still put
I
out
don't,
stuff.
he's the only original member. I don't even know if he's got much of a band anymore, but he still
It's
tours
just him.
small towns and stuff like that. And, he never made it big, I think, because he was pretty outspoken about his, maybe more conservative beliefs and things like that. But, yeah.
I think there's, it's funny. Like I think there's more of a market for that now than ever, where it's like people just, I think people were a lot more closed-minded to just, like we were saying earlier, ignoring an artist's politics or belief and just enjoying the music they're making. So
yeah, this guy's an excellent songwriter. So
yeah, that's what's important to me. I don't care if I like a song. I don't give a shit about anything else.
I agree.
My number 8 is an odd one because this is a band that I got into very late in life, but it's Iron Maiden, Brave New World. And it came out May 29th of 2000. And there's the opening track on that record is called The Wicker Man. And I did not understand Iron Maiden until I heard that song. And then
I've heard that song before.
It like the chorus goes, "Your time will come." But it's like it's like this epic, like chest beating, like yeah. But they got 3 guitarists on that record, and that record is just fantastic. Brave New World from front to back. But that opening track, like I grew up having like Eddie posters, but I never liked Maiden when I was a kid. I never was like way into them when I was a kid. And that record, when I heard that album, I'm like a huge Maiden fan now. So that changed.
Yeah, I never really gave them a chance over the years. I think it wasn't until I met Eric and got talking to him about metal and stuff, and I finally gave him a chance. And it's like I can see why older guys really like this stuff, but for me, getting into it 40 plus years later, it's like
Yeah, it's a different vibe. I mean, you have to kind of understand where they're coming from. Like if you listen to a song like Hallowed Be Thy Name, like one of their best songs, it's like an opera. Like this, it's like a miniature opera. Like it's a theatrical piece. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like it's like it's dope though. It's like when you understand what they're doing, it's so brilliant,
Well, I love the song Run to the Hills.
That's I mean, that's like not even one of their best songs either, man. Like there's like so many, they have so much great, like the Somewhere in Time record was the second Maiden record I got into after Brave New World. And like that record has like Children of the Damned and like, have you ever heard, Can I Play with Madness is on Seventh Son. Wasted Years. Have you ever heard that song?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, Maiden's it's so good. Wasted Years is such a great song. Like that could be an acoustic song, it's like such a great song. It's like him talking about touring and he's like looking out the window of a bus, like another city rolls by and just talking about like how he's wasted all this time. Like, he's been in this it's so deep, it's good stuff. Anyway, moving on.
Even though I'm not a big fan of them, I'd still love to see them live someday because I think they put on a heck of a show.
I got to see them on the Brave New World tour. Another reason.
Okay.
With Queensryche and Halford.
Wow.
Yeah. So much metal. That was like.
All right. My number 8, I'm guessing this one's on your list somewhere, but I'm going to go with Blindside Silence, April 20th, 2002. I listened to Blindside since their first album. Was pretty big into them even in the 90s. That one almost made my 90s list. And but their first 2 albums were like pretty raw and basic, and this one just ramped up the whole production and everything. They blew up, and I just love that kind of growing with the band, you know.
That record is so good. Another Swedish band too. Like we had this whole conversation with Elaine the other day about all the great bands coming out of Sweden.
Mhm.
And it's just Blindside, another one that I forgot about. Like there's so many good bands. I'm like, oh yeah, this band.
Yeah.
I have that first Blindside record and Silence and what's the one after that? Burning Fire on CD. The first one is the one where he's like holding the records, right?
Yeah. There's one in between that one and Silence then too that's got like a monkey face on it.
Okay, I don't know that one.
That one's probably their heaviest album, but yeah, I'd love to get Christian on someday and chat with him, see what they're doing now.
Totally, they're great. I that one didn't make my top 10, but it's in my. It like got pushed down the list by some other stuff.
Okay,
but that's a great record though. It's crazy. This list for me is actually a lot heavier than the 90s one. It's a lot more like actual like heavier metal. Yeah,
well,
harder
excited.
stuff.
I'm excited.
That was number 8, right?
Yep.
So number 7, Slipknot, Iowa.
Oh, okay. You went really heavy.
Yeah, that's a 01 record, but like I put that on my list because first of all, I didn't put the first Slipknot on my last list, and that should have been on there. That's like such a phenomenal record. That first Slipknot record is just tear your face off. Like that's when the first time I heard that song, Eyeless, my jaw was just on the floor. I was like, start that over. Like that you can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes. That's fucking brilliant. You know, just like the whole everything about it. The ending, like that groove at the ending, the oh my God, it's such a good record. So heavy, so just like front to back brutal. And then so when Iowa came out and I listened to it, I was like, it's like they actually stepped it up. Like it was like not sophomore slump at all. Like they went harder. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are the real deal when I heard this record. And so I ranked this very high. There's a couple, like the one song where he's like, I want to slit your throat and the wound. Like it's like, that's brutal shit, man. Like,
yeah, I remember when the debut album came out and all the guys in high school are like, this is the heaviest stuff I've ever heard. And like for me, I had been listening to Living Sacrifice and Zayo and stuff. So, I mean, I've heard a lot of screaming stuff before, but those guys, I don't know. There was something about Slipknot. I'm like, it's all right. But
it's the drums, man.
Yeah, that's
Joey Jordison. Because Living Sacrifice and Zayo are good, but they don't got Joey Jordison.
Right. Yep.
That guy's like insane. I mean, that's my opinion on what's different.
Well, I agree. And you know, when he's doing when they do that spinning drum thing and all that.
They're lucky that they found a guy like Weinberg, Jay Weinberg. I mean, he's Max Weinberg's son, so but like maybe not lucky, but it's like he's not as he's not Joey Jordison, he's a different guy, but he's got those chops at least. Anyway.
All right, number 7 for me. Haste the Day, Burning Bridges.
Man, that's a band I forgot about.
March 9th, 04. That again, this one's tough because my favorite album of theirs came out like maybe a year or two before that, but it was kind of a 7-song EP, so I didn't put it on here, but I saw them, they were still in college, and on the weekends they would tour up into Wisconsin and stuff from Indiana. And I saw them play at the UW-Madison campus one time, and I was just blown away. I'm like, holy cow, these guys are good. And then they came out with that first full length, and it was when that, I don't know what you call that, the metalcore thing was really taken off, and I felt like they made a perfect metalcore album.
Yeah, it's crazy to me too. I realized going through this, like how many great bands, especially heavy bands, came up during the 2000s, because pop, like radio rock in general, was garbage during the 2000s. But there's a lot of good underground, like heavy stuff and like rap and even like some cool like underground electronica in the 2000s.
Yeah. So Haste Today was very, very influential on me around that time.
Yeah, you're good at pulling out those deep cuts. Like some of these bands that like 40 Below Summer, that's a band that, wow, I totally know who they are, but I haven't. It's just a band I wouldn't have thought of. That's amazing. Okay, my number 6 is Black Dahlia Murder Unhallowed. And I really wanted to put Ritual on here because, man, the stuff that these guys are doing guitar wise, it's really about the guitar work for me with these guys. It's like that really like kind of 2-part counterpoint, like interwoven harmony guitar stuff that they do. Like all their melodies in the guitar, you know? So, but this record, when I heard it, there's a song called Elder Misanthropy. And I just like to this day, it's almost like a video game riff. It's just such a catchy guitar riff. So anyway, this one,
check it out.
Yeah, this one made it high on my list for that reason.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
you are going way heavier this
Trevor.
this decade.
Yeah, I did.
That's funny.
I was surprised. I surprised myself. I was like, wow, if I'm going metal for this era,
Yeah,
like it was like a lot of good heavy albums.
yeah. All right, my number 6 is just a repeat of one of yours, Norma Jean, Bless the Martyr.
Yeah.
Again, I found this band, their album. Have you ever heard of Cornerstone Festival? It was this big Christian music festival down in Illinois. That, but they really had a lot of heavy bands there and stuff. It was kind of controversial in the Christian world. Like, is this really Christian festival or not? And
Yeah.
but I picked up this little EP by Ludacris. It was like 5 songs on there. And I'm like, wow, this sounds cool. And then, you know, they signed to Solid State and they put out that full length, and then they became Norma Jean. And when Bless the Martyr came out, it just blew me away. And I saw them live around that era, probably 4 or 5 times. And I mean, the dude would just climb up these tent poles and jump off into the crowd. And it was just wild.
I wish I had seen them in those days, man. It's like that band just, it's weird. They're much like Zayo, not like, I don't think there's an original member left in the band, right? Like it's a completely different cast of characters at this point.
Well, Corey Brandon, the singer now, he played in Living Sacrifice for a little while.
Did he?
Like,
I didn't know that.
And stuff.
That guy is such a G.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I like Norma Jean. I think they're one of the bands of that era that like really holds up so well. Like I was saying the other day, how it's almost like what James Hetfield does. He has kind of like, Corey has kind of like a raspy, like harsh voice, but he's able to sing and still be like harsh and raspy at the same time, you know? And not a lot of metal singers can do that. So but man, have you seen Skogan, the original Norma Jean singer? Have you seen his new band 68?
Yeah, they played here in Minneapolis a couple years ago.
Did you saw them live?
Yeah.
Oh man, Hate 65 is where I saw them live on Hate. They killed it. I was so impressed. Did you watch the last song? Yeah, where they take the drums away.
Yeah. Like, this is brilliant.
So good. Like, just like it's a new thing too for him. I was like, that is dope that he can switch up like that and just like still kick ass.
I felt like he was the one that like made Norma Jean and set them on a trajectory to just be great ever.
Be dominant. Yeah. Corey took over at the second album, Oh God, the Aftermath.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's done a great job. I mean, some of those albums are awesome, but I mean, Josh Scoggin, phenomenal musician, brilliant guy.
If we did a top 10 list for the 2010s, All Hail would definitely be on it for me. Like that last, it's 2019, I think, that last Norma Jean record, it was like every song on that is great. Yeah. And then the last song is kind of like their Planet Caravan, kind of like a more mellow one.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, great choice, man. I love that.
So there we go. There's our first double.
Yeah, we finally crossed over. I love it. All right, now we're into the top 5, and we have about 20 minutes. All right. It's funny. This one I changed this morning after talking to my son, but this one's Lamb of God, Ashes of the Wake, August 31st, 2004. And originally I had As the Palaces Burn.
Okay.
because there's a song on Palace's Burn I really like the riff on, but then pound for pound, Ashes of the Wake I think is the superior record, just in overall riffs and production. It's kind of like that was like almost like a twofer. They kind of like did those two records side by side, like very similar riffs and subject matter and everything. But
Yeah, let's see what songs are on that one.
That record, just the song Ashes of the Wake is deep, you know. It's like them reading a account of a Marine who said he was committing genocide in Iraq, and it's got like it's making like a political statement that's pretty
now you've
profound.
got something to die for.
Yeah. Those I almost put New American Gospel on here just because when I heard that record, I got that record I read the review of it in like a guitar magazine. And so I was just like, oh, the guitar magazine said this was kind of cool. And I bought it. And I was in a band at the time and the drummer never stopped listening to it. And it was just like the recording of it sounded so like low budget. Like they recorded it in their garage, but it was just such a hard record.
Mm-hmm.
Lamb of God's another band that's kind of really just.
I never got into them a lot, but I saw them live a couple years ago. They opened up for Megadeth, and I was like, wow, they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're a good band, man. Great band.
All right, number 5 for me, Zao, Funeral of God.
Oh, that's a good one.
This is another one where it was like, for me, huge Zao fan. I thought they broke up for good. You know, everyone kind of left.
That was like their comeback.
Yeah, and this was their comeback, and it was like controversial, and it just, again, that production, signing to Ferret Records and stuff, production just went up and just blew me away.
I remember that was when that record came out. It was like I used to follow Lamb Goat a lot. And it made me kind of like revisit Zao's stuff, their discography on the whole.
Well, and towards the end of the album too, some of those songs they're beautiful. You know, they bring it way down and then mess with different tones and rhythms and stuff like that. And
that's right. It kind of mellows out in the later.
Yeah, it's really good.
Good choice, man. All right, number 4 for me, Glassjaw, Worship and Tribute. And there's a lot of like these screamo bands in this era that came out, like The Used and Story of the Year, and you know, even like My Chemical Romance, who I really like a lot of their stuff. I just think Glassjaw was kind of on the forefront of that like Deftones type screamo thing, and then they like this album is where they really just kind of like crystallized it, and it's just so like they got a good producer, because the album before this that they put out on Roadrunner was kind of schizophrenic. It was like kind of all over the place, like a lot of different, and this one was just like much more streamlined, and the guy Daryl Palumbo has like a fantastic voice, and they just really honed in on his ability to write hooks, and the guitar work is incredible. And the energy of the album is just like, it still has the craziness of Glassjaw and some of the later tracks, but like the first 4 tracks are just like fire.
That's another band I know I've heard some of their stuff. I don't know them. And I know that they were super influential and stuff, and I got to go visit some of that.
Yeah, it's emo. It's got the emo tinge to it, right? So some metal people might not necessarily appreciate it, but I think it's great. And the guitar work, like Justin Beck is just a G. And then Larkin plays on it too. We talked about before. From Godsmack.
Right.
I forgot he was also in a band called Amen. That when I played in a band called Jagged Thought Process for a while down here in LA, and Amen was like super huge. They were like the big like underground act at that time. I don't really like much of their stuff. It didn't really.
Is Larkin from your area?
No, he's from Boston.
Oh, he is. Okay.
But he was just this. He's like one of those dudes who was in a bunch of bands. He was in a band called Wrathchild America, Souls at Zero, and then he started doing a lot of session playing and just like touring with different bands. Okay. And then he wound up in Godsmack.
Okay. Yeah, he's one of my favorite drummers to watch for sure.
One of the best. No doubt.
All right, my last four, Dustin, I'm kind of going more mainstream here.
All right.
Love
to see it.
Number 4 is Disturbed, The Sickness.
I thought I'd see this one.
Just made the cut March 7th, 2000. So
wow. That's how old that record is.
Isn't that insane?
It's crazy.
But I just remember that one, new metal's kind of blowing up, but with that whole, all the different sounds he would make with his mouth, and it was awesome.
It was different. Like, I remember when I saw that, like, I wasn't a huge Disturbed fan at the time. Like, I definitely have a respect for them now that I didn't at the time. But I remember when it hit thinking, okay, good. Like, metal's in the mainstream now. Like, this is kind of like, because people, it was like stuff that was like popular, like outside of metal circles. And another side note, I was watching a thing about Drowning Pool this morning, and homeboy Draymond was close friends with Dave Williams, the original.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Drowning Pool singer, and he like commented when he passed, was like, said some really nice stuff about him.
All right, I'd chat more, but we only got 10 minutes. We got
we got to wind it down. All right, we're last 3. Okay, so number 3. This is a controversial pick, and part of the reason that I picked it is because of the date it was released, and it's Slayer, God Hates Us All. Do you know when this record came out?
Is it like 2009?
It came out on 9/11, 2001.
Oh, it's early. Okay.
It came out literally on September 11th, 2001, the day the towers fell. This album was released.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, Slayer did 9/11.
Well, now that you say that, didn't POD release Satellite on that same day too?
Probably.
It was. I wanted to say it came out right on around that same time, and
yeah, there's a bunch of other records that came. I just thought the irony of it being called God Hates Us All and coming out on, and it's a great album. Like, there's some, like, it's all about like religious, like, wars, like jihad and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And like bloodline, like fighting the Crusades and all that kind of stuff. I love bands like Slayer for that too, because I like that, like it's like I relate it to like Howard Stern, right? Like, if you don't know much about Howard Stern, you just think like lesbians and farts. It's like this very surface level thing. But when you really scratch the surface on Howard Stern, he's talking about some deep stuff. Like, he's on some deep stuff. And I feel like bands like Slayer and Maiden, even, they kind of do that. Like, when I was a kid, everyone's like so scared of Slayer because it's satanic and stuff. It's like the song Angel of Death, that death is a history lesson about the Holocaust, right? Like, it's about Auschwitz, the meaning of pain, the way that I want you, it's like, and this record, God Hates Us All. It's like I said, it's kind of just like, here's a bunch of songs about like religious wars in history where they, like, religion was used as an excuse to kill like millions or thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
It is very thought-provoking. However, you can't deny that Slayer has used a lot of satanic imagery. Of course, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you like the surface level, you're just like, oh, they're satanic. But like, but if you dig into what they're saying, you read the lyrics, it's more than just like, we love Satan. Like, it's like there's some history lessons there. There's some deeper undertone. Yeah, I don't know a lot of Slayer, never got into them. Probably, to your point, because of the imagery and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard a song off that album.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. God Hates Us All, the title track, is a great song. Anyway.
Well, Pastor Joey will check it out just for your sake.
You don't have to. Yeah, I'm not going to twist your arm, of course, but it's a good record.
All right. My number 3 might shock people based on my heavier stuff before it, but Shinedown, Sound of Madness. This is later, February 23, 2009. But this album is one of my all-time favorites, definitely my top 3 of all time. So I can't recommend this one enough if you like hard rock, whatever. There's
some heavy riffs on it. That's one I listened to after you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I like some of the grooves on it.
My 7-year-old son is really into Shinedown, and he plays it nonstop. So I am getting a little sick of hearing it, but still one of my favorites.
Created a monster. That's dope. All right, number 2. My number 1 is so off kilter. Like, it's probably a record no one's ever heard. But my number 2 is a record a lot of people probably know. Deftones' White Pony.
I was gonna guess that to be your number 1, but
Yeah, that's Deftones, obviously, like, they were huge in Salt Lake City. They actually did their album release for Around the Fur in Salt Lake, and
really?
I saw them and Quicksand at a skating rink in Salt Lake. It was such a killer show. Like, I'll never forget that show. It was crazy. Deftones and Quicksand at a skating rink with a big disco ball and like people crowd surfing and stuff. But yeah, White Pony, I mean, another record that kind of like took heavier stuff a little bit into the mainstream, and just a bunch of great tracks on it.
That one probably would make my honorable mention list here.
Yeah.
That was such a great.
Deftones is one of the bands from that era that I never really expected to carry through the way they have. Like, they've put out a lot of really good stuff over the years. Like, Diamond Eyes record is great. You know, like, there's the recent one they put out is good too, Ohms, and they just put out a lot of good stuff. So
Change is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, I mean, props to Deftones for just being awesome.
All right, number 2, Rammstein, Mutter, April 2nd, 01. This one, again, it's kind of like Blindside. I felt like I kind of followed the band early on, and then all of a sudden they blew up and kind of went mainstream. And but there's not a bad song on this record.
Yeah, that's another band that like was always in the peripheral for me. Like, one of the craziest shows I ever went to was Rammstein and Korn in Salt Lake City. But I was just never a huge Rammstein fan. I don't know why. Like, they were so awesome live. Like, their stage show, and like they're like shooting fire, and the dude had like this laser on his face, like the Borg. It was insane.
Yeah.
He's all yoked too. He comes out like all like Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff with his Borg laser. It was
I think there's something about, I'm German, so there's something about me that's like, oh, cool, a German band hitting it big, and
yeah.
There you go, number 2.
All right. Number 1, drum roll for me. We got 5 minutes left here. My number 1 is a band called Modern Life is War, Witness. And this is a record that it's a hardcore band out of Iowa. On Death Wish Records. They recently reunited and have been doing some stuff. They put out a record a couple years ago, actually, that was really great too, called Fever Hunting. So it has some really great stuff. It has a song called Find a Way. But this record just like, I mean, it's one of those albums that has so much raw emotion in it. Like, I can put it on still and get chills. With the first song's called The Outsiders, aka Hell is for Heroes, and it's just like the lyrics and the like raw emotion of his voice. And I think the other thing I really love about it is it's heavy in a way that like a lot of other records aren't heavy. It doesn't have a lot of that like chug that metal has, the chug, like the everything kick and drum and bass, everything hitting together. It's more like the chords that they use are kind of like dissonant and like a lot more like noisy. I mean, and then, the drums and bass are hitting together, but it's like it's just a different kind of heavy. It's like kind of like a raw punk rock type of heavy, but the vocals are just so like angry and dissonant, and like the emotion is so heavy that it's such a heavy album. It's like one of my favorite, like,
I've never heard of them. I'm gonna have to check them out.
Yeah, they had a record before this called My Love My Way, but this record is like it's a hardcore masterpiece. It's like one of the best hardcore records ever made, I think.
2 Iowa bands made your list.
Yeah. Some fucked up stuff going on in Iowa.
All right, last couple minutes here. My number 1 is Alter Bridge, One Day Remains, August 10, 04. They've been one of my bands one of my favorite bands since they came out. And again, there's not a bad song on the record. I just fell in love with it right away. Miles' voice, amazing. I was never a huge Creed fan, but it was kind of fun to see what Creed could make without Scott Stapp. And it was, I mean, Mark Tremonti is just a genius.
Yeah.
Some of the best riffs. I mean, he can shred just, and this album was like heavy, but it wasn't heavy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Musically, it was heavy, but yet it was mainstream rock and just great. I don't know how much you know Alter Bridge, but
I know enough to know that I like a lot of their stuff. I
Yeah.
love Tremonti. I mean, as someone who plays guitar, that guy is Tremonti's a G. He's a great guitar player. So